and it's your pickup. And your time starts now.
Right, good evening everyone. Hopefully we start as we need to go on. I think I've already broken the first rule of 10 slides, I'm pretty sure there's more. But I'm going to speak today about user calls specifically. So Paul asked me to do a topic, and I thought one thing that I do quite a lot in my role, I thought I'd keep it quite specific on user calls. Obviously something that I'm sure a lot of us do in this room, but I think something that maybe we don't sit back on the process and how to get the most out of it. So a little bit of intro about me. I work at a company called Orbital Witness. It's where I met Paul. He was the head of product there. I'm a product manager there. We're a Series A but startup, so we're Series A stage. We got this last year. We're about sort of 45, 50 employees now. And we predominantly operate with lawyers. So for us, I think user calls is probably even more relevant than some other industries because we deal with a very, very particular user group. So lawyers obviously very set in their ways. And as a result, they have to deal with a lot of things like this. So documents that are very illegible, very difficult to get insights out of. And our mission as a company is to essentially try and automate this due diligence process. So obviously, why are user calls important? I wanted to kick off with. I think used a really bad example here. Like you could just see a graph like this. Imagine, I'm a product manager of a sports network or something. I can look at this graph and conclude basketball is what I should focus on. It's got the most interest. That's where we're going to expand to next. But I think obviously doing that, we miss a lot of the context from the user about why is basketball the most voted thing here. Is it because it's easy to watch currently? Is it because it's cheaper than some of the other things? Is it that they actually prefer football, but no one's currently providing it at the moment? So I think just looking at this in isolation, or probably even worse, being told by one large customer, we want X feature and just going with it, is not really telling us the full story. And I also think in the context of empowering our teams to build good things, that is not that exciting. You show that to a developer, an engineer on your team, or someone outside of your team, that is not that exciting. I think we can get a lot more from speaking to the user. And then also to come back to us, we've got lawyers who are even really more specific and very set in their ways. And also they have a lot of domain-specific knowledge that can't begin to be understood by just taking things at a glance and looking at servers. So I wanted to go through the life cycle of sort of how we book in with these users, how I then run the call, and then sharing those insights with the team to get the most out of them. So when booking a user call, I generally like to always lead with a topic. I've generally found if you're ever going to ask a user to just have a call about their workflow, the impetus for them to do that is pretty low. What are they getting out of this? They're just telling you about their life. They're just giving you their time for little reason. When leading with a specific topic in mind, firstly, for me, this is the first litmus test of any value. If a user's going to give me their time, I've probably got a little bit of indication there's some value there. If I send out 10 emails on one specific feature and 10 on another specific feature, and one gets 50% booked in and one gets 10, I generally have a bit of knowledge that that one with 50% is more valuable. So the users much prefer to talk about something they're interested in. So whenever we've got in touch with users and said, you've got a specific problem with understanding this lease document, let's have a call on it, they're much more open to that with, can you just tell us about the pains of being a lawyer? And then this is probably like the most salesy part on here, that you don't actually have to speak about that topic in the call. It can definitely be a part of it, but all of the topics that we lead with in our outreach make up 50% of the call, 20% of the call, that's okay. They still get to cover that topic, but if you want to get other insights about them, such as their process as a whole, that is completely fine to do, but you'll have much more success actually getting them in the calendar list. And then going on to that, I've generally found that reaching out to users with some sort of warm touch point is obviously going to be far better than just cold emails. So if you've got intercom or anything of the like, this is a really common way we've got calls to witness. We'll run an in-app survey asking them about some initiatives we're looking at. Anyone who replies to that survey is absolutely prime for, you told us you want to see this, we're now looking into it, do you want to have a call about it? And they're much more likely to look into. By clicking that, they almost feel a little bit like they kind of owe it, for giving you that feedback. And then there's an example at the bottom here. I can share these after if people are interested, but this is all through any of your team will have a sort of sales automation tool. All of the emails I'm sending out to users are going through that based off the topic, cuts down the manual admin on your end, which can make user calls particularly painful to book in against many of the other things you'll be managing. Then coming into the call beforehand, I like to always remind the user what they're going to be discussing, giving them a link, giving them a time. Many users will not dial in, especially if they're not very good at managing their calendar. Small chance of increasing the chance they will. And then I use Notion for a pre-call agenda. This is the general call format I'll follow for a specific topic, split into 3 main parts. That can be shared with anyone joining you on the call. If possible, I'll generally bring a designer or a developer, not more than two, because it tends to overwhelm the user and makes it feel a little bit like they're being watched as opposed to a natural call. But generally someone from my team that isn't a product manager, so they can also give their insight. And then the call itself, coming on to this, so generally I split the call into 3 parts. Again, what I said about the topic there earlier doesn't just have to be about that topic. So we'll usually spend about 5 minutes on who the user currently is, how do they currently use our platform, why have they taken the call in the first place. We'll then probably spend about 10 to 15 minutes on their current process and problems. So this could be in general, if you just want to understand what pain points you're even solving for users or what could you help them with. Or if you're touching on a specific area, we generally take them through how do they currently do that. So to give an example, one thing we did at Orbital Witness is we allowed them to overlay context map documents onto the map. It can be quite complicated and painful to read. Hearing them tell you their process of I put this in a light box or I put it on PowerPoint and change the transparency is quite informative to see what they're currently doing. And then finally, if possible, I like to always have a solution testing part of it. So ideally a Figma prototype or a test environment with the user screen sharing and leading this. I'll generally get far more out of this than any form of you demoing a solution, which generally be met with sort of ums and ahs and far less feedback from them actually using it. And on all of this, if possible, one user. I don't like calls with 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. They all tend to follow the crowd and one person isn't owning it. With one person screen sharing, there's no real way for them to get out of that. And again, I mentioned that there. If there's no solution in mind, obviously this part can be cut. There's some calls before we have a solution. We are just talking about what is the process and problems. Completely fine as well. This can generally take a bit more than half an hour. I'd always emphasize booking half an hour. And again, for a platform like Calendar, something like that, it's just easy for them. These are pretty obvious ones, but running the actual call itself, obviously record the call. I'm going to come on to that in a moment. I think one part that for user calls, for us as PMs, we can really help ourselves with internally is actually sharing that with the business. Can't do any of that if it's not recorded. Can't actually show the rest of the business what you've learned. Obviously, try not to ask any of the users any leading questions. You may come in there with a hypothesis. We want the users to validate that by themselves. We don't want to lead them down that path and then say, look, we've proved it. And then I like to always, on that doc I showed you earlier on Notion, I like to always have a section at the top of what are we trying to find out here. Like, we're not just speaking to them for zero reason. What is the aim we're trying to get out of this? So again, once you're going back through it, you can refer back to it. And then this thing, I think this thing is something that's maybe missed a little bit, but it's really, really powerful. Getting your dev team particularly excited about the calls you've had, sharing the insights of them. So what I have to use here is actually sales software. So you'll have a sales team probably internally, have something like this that is recording all the reps as they take calls. If you can get a license for that, that will drastically cut down on the admin you need to do. You can take all the clips out, share that directly in Slack, and the devs on your team can listen exactly to that. And then to follow up on that, so on the left here is an example of a post-call summary I might have shared. You've got the recording, you've got the notes, you've got the key details, and then this will be the magic.
I think it's kind of putting it all together, really. I don't think there's any one thing that necessarily takes a lot of time, but it's having to do potentially check so many different things and pull it together, really. I think that's the time-consuming thing. I think it's
I'll share as many of them as possible post-call. That's what all the individual links are on the points there. And then wrapping all that up, just on the admin side of things, with the last 30 seconds I've got, this is just the tools I'll use throughout the process to specifically speed up the admin pain of booking user calls and ensuring you and your team can get the most out of them. And I'll skip that bit then as per the panel, and that should be just in 10 minutes.